All right, let's jump right in. We're constantly told the stock market is just unpredictable, right? It's all about the latest news, politics, inflation. But what if that's not the whole story? What if there's a hidden pattern, a cycle that's been around for over 100 years that some Wall Street insiders claim can actually predict major market moves with, well, pretty stunning accuracy? Today, we're going to break down this really controversial theory. So, a 50-year Wall Street veteran, a guy named Mark Tragen, he puts this theory's main claim, well, pretty bluntly. He's on record saying a massive crash is on the horizon. But, and this is the key part, he says its timing isn't random. It's dictated by a force that most of us have probably never even heard about. And this really sets up the central conflict perfectly, doesn't it? In one corner, you have all the stuff that fills the headlines every single day. The political drama, the latest inflation numbers, the national debt, the whole shebang. But this theory, it basically says all of that is just noise, and that the real driver is this predictable, hidden cycle. So, that brings us to the big question, right? If it's not about who's in the White House or what the Fed is doing with interest rates, then what in the world is supposed to be pulling the strings behind the scenes? Well, in some circles, this theory is known as the election cycle. And according to the source material we're looking at, while it might sound new to most of us on Wall Street, it's treated like a bit of an open secret. So what is it exactly? Well, the core idea is pretty straightforward. The theory suggests that the stock market moves in this really predictable four-year pattern, and that pattern lines up perfectly with the U.S. presidential term. And here's the absolute kicker. It supposedly doesn't matter which party is in power. Republican, Democrat, the cycles stay the same. And look, the people who believe in this will tell you it isn't some fringe idea they cooked up. They point to the fact that huge firms, we're talking Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Charles Schwab, have all studied this pattern. It's based on over 100 years of market data. The claim is that this thing is so reliable, you could almost set your watch by it. Okay, so how does this four-year pattern actually work in practice? Let's break it down year by year. It all breaks down into four distinct phases. You've got year one, the post-election year. Then comes year two, the midterm year. After that is year three, the pre-election year. And finally, year four, the election year itself. Now, according to the theory, each of these years has its own very specific personality. Year one, usually pretty strong. Year two, that's the danger zone. Year three tends to be a big recovery. And year four is often positive as we head into another election. So let's start with year one of the cycle, the post-election year. Think of a year like 2025. Historically, this is supposed to be a really, really strong year for stocks. It's usually a bullish time for the market, with some pretty significant average gains. And when you look at the historical data, it's pretty compelling. In 9 out of the last 10 of these cycles, that's a full 90% of the time, the first year of a president's term ended up being a positive year for the market. That's a pretty strong track record. But, and this is a really big but, here comes the twist. After all that strength in year one, the theory claims that year two is, statistically speaking, the most dangerous year of the whole cycle, by far. It's the one with the highest chance of a major correction or maybe even a full-on crash. So why all this doom and gloom about year two? Why does it get singled out? Well, let's take a look at the data that the theory uses to back up this pretty alarming claim. Okay, this single number is pretty staggering. A study from Ned Davis Research, and this goes all the way back to 1933, found that the average stock returns in the second year of a presidency are a whopping 75% worse than they are in the first year. 75%! And this really puts it into an even starker perspective. I mean, look at this. Compared to every other year in the cycle, year two is just the dramatic underperformer. It lags behind year three by 80% and behind year four by almost 60%. It is, without a doubt, the clear outlier. And you don't even have to go that far back in history to see examples. In 2018, which was the second year of Trump's term, the S&P 500 had a really sharp drop. And then in 2022, the second year of Biden's term, we saw the market crash into a full-blown bear market. So if you follow that pattern, the cycle points directly to 2026 as the next major high-risk period. Which, of course, leads to the most obvious question. Why? Why would this pattern even exist? If it's so consistent, what's actually causing it? What's the deal with the second year of a presidency being so tough for the market? Well, the source material offers a few potential explanations. One idea is that, a new administration comes in with tough new policies in year one, and by year two, the effects are really starting to be felt in the economy. Another big one is the uncertainty around the midterm elections that always happen in year two. But really, the core idea behind all of it is super simple. Markets just hate uncertainty, and year two is absolutely full of it. So, what does this all boil down to? What's the key takeaway? Really, the main message of this whole theory is about trusting the long-term data over all that short-term news chatter we hear every day. And this is where the theory gets incredibly specific. Based on the historical averages of when these year two downturns usually kick off, it actually pinpoints a specific date, Monday, March 16th, 2026. That's the day it predicts is the most likely start for the next bear market. I mean, that is a bold and very, very precise claim. And this quote from Mark Chaikin really just captures the entire philosophy behind this whole thing. The argument is simple. The answers you're looking for aren't in those heated debates you see on TV. They're in the cold, hard data of market history. So really, the ultimate argument here is a challenge to how we normally think about the market. It's suggesting that underneath all the chaotic day-to-day noise of financial news, there might be these deeper, much more predictable currents moving things along if you just know where to look. And that leaves us with a really fascinating final thought, doesn't it? Whether this specific 100-year-old cycle proves to be true or not, it kind of makes you wonder, right? What other hidden patterns, what other predictable rhythms might be out there, driving our world, our economy, our politics, maybe even our own lives, just humming along right beneath the surface?